Chapter 13, A Promised Gift. The following day, security was heightened as the entire area was quiet, as everyone mourned the death of Old One. Debra sat on the porch drinking her sorrows away as she reminisced about Old Ones and her past. Thoughts of the twins confused her, the twins, Anakatas, a forbidden mix, like myself, she whispers to herself. Abooksigun is sitting outside on the porch of Jotam's home, thinking to himself in the darkness as the night sky is alight with speckles of stars. How can the twins be trusted now? He says to himself. Sabaoth and his Nephilim seed run through their blood. Will they be a risk? When Alda calls him, Abooksigun. He stands to attention quickly before realizing who he was. I am here. What is it now, Alda? Alda notices his attention is elsewhere. Oh, this is not an emergency, I just thought I'll let you know that we are moving at midnight. Akun seems to know where this witch lives. Abooksigun sits back down, really? And how does she know that? Only Anu has met and had some contact with it. That is a road I know nothing about. Something about their minds being intertwined. It's a twin thing, so I'm told. Except that they are unique and outright dangerous. Alda shows a look of concern on his face and Abooksigun sees it. Besides the twins, Alda, what else troubles you? Abooksigun senses worry from Alda. Can we win this war? Every time we turn around for a small break, hell is turned loose against us. Is God really with us? He did not give us these powers for nothing. I feel so spent. We constantly watch for danger because everyone else seems too calm and relaxed. The twins could do so much devastation and destruction. How can we know or be sure that when we leave tonight to fight one of the greatest battles we will have in all of our lifetimes that the Abenians will not know that we are coming through the twins? Yael appears before Abooksigun. Your mind wavers because evil is brewing to your east and west. You are surrounded by only one very powerful, so-called Abenian, which is toying with everyone's mind. Know of certainty your marriage to your wife is ordained according to Sabaoth's will. Rebuke evil and fast, for war is near. Yael disappears, and Alda sits there staring into space as Abooksigun reassures him of victory against the Abenians. Doubt and worry sets in after death, and many of us began to doubt as I doubted myself just before you arrived. Old One is gone, our life is nothing but a sneeze, a chew, the ah is your conception, your birth, and the chew is death. We have to make it count, make it worth something. My guardian just warned me that evil is among us, causing us to waver. Let us mourn, if not for a minute, and then renew our strength in the Sabaoth. To answer your question, I do not know, Alda. I trust Yahweh will secure victory for us. We can only be prepared as best as we can. Have faith. Trust in the Sabaoth, your God. We shall win. If the twins were not supposed to be with us, I feel assured Sabaoth would have gotten rid of them by now. I, too, worry about them, but I trust in Sabaoth. Sabaoth is able, my friend. Alda sighs and looks back at Abooksigun. We shall win. Alda bows to Abooksigun and walks away. As Alda disappears into the night, Cush interrupted, hold on, now, Big Masai. I thought you were going to tell me when my grandfather and grandmother got married. Abooksigun's just talked about her, but you haven't mentioned a thing. Big Masai laughs, child, I forgot. I got into the story and left all that behind. Well, they got married right around the time of Akutukananu's first encounter with Bastet and Abooksigun's breakup with Lishan. Abooksigun was confused and broken-hearted about Lishan's behavior, and Akutukananu was confused about her being a descendant of Nephilim. They confided their feelings to each other and fell in love months later. Old One, since he was the eldest, ordained the wedding, and the Dirty 30 were all present. The marriage was pretty much like Wanyenyekevu and Queen's relationship in that they respected each other and loved one another. But that's enough for today. You must prepare for tomorrow's deployment, I will finish up after dinner. While Cush was packing his things and getting ready to go off to the military, he thought about the fact that he was a descendant of both the first man, Adam, and a demigod or Nephilim because of his grandmother's lineage, and wondered to himself, who or what am I? Early the following day, Big Masai saw the confusion on his face and asked, "What ails you?" Cush saw her concern. "I am confused about myself. Am I a demigod and a lineage of Adam, the first man?" Big Masai said, "Adam, the first man, didn't have an earthly mother or father either," and, holding her hands up to say, "What's your point?" Big Masai said, "Child, you a human being that Sabaoth wants to use for his glory like we all are, and that's all you need to know. Many of our people barely know that much. Sabaoth will show you what he wants to show you. Tell you what he wants to tell you. You either obey, or you don't." Cush said, "Okay, but I have a few more questions. Is Luotica the same place as Takar? Asana and Asana the same person or two different people?" Big Masai said, "Child, Lux Takri, Tak, and Takri are all the same name for one place. Tak and Takri are short for Lux Takri and also the nickname for its people. However, Luotica is a hidden name for the ancient kingdom Lux Takri. Asanananu or Asana was the mother of Asuna or Asanananu, so yes, they are two different women of the same lineage. The Egyptians were very complicated and secretive regarding their names. She smiles, and so I decided to be just as complicated." Cush just looked at Big Masai. "Well, you did your job, 'cause I was definitely confused too. But I got it now." Big Masai stood there for a minute. "You know what, I was also thinking, if people know that you are the relative of Samel and Wanyenyekevu, will they expect the same out of you? Tell them nothing and make a name for yourself. Sabaoth is with you, and that's all you and they need to know. Agreed?" Cush shook his head. "Agreed." Big Masai looked at the time and said, "Now, I'm going to make your favorite dinner and finish up this story. How do barbecue ribs, potato salad, baked beans, and some homemade biscuits sound?" Cush lit up like a Christmas tree. "Sounds good to me." After dinner, Big Masai grabbed a small box and placed it on the end table next to Cush. "Now, don't open this till I finish my story." Shaking his head, Cush smiled. "Okay." Big Masai took a seat in Sam L's favorite chair. "Now, where was I? Oh yeah, Mletsi appeared before Abooksigun. Non-believers must leave, for war is here, and all shall perish unless they are believers. They should cross the Mason-Dixie line or die." Unbeknownst to them, they didn't know Bastet had stayed behind when all the Abenians had left, maybe because she sensed the twins' presence. She just knew she would be the one to complete the mission Satan longed for. She used her abilities to torment the twins. It wasn't until the explosion and the water poisoning that she was awakened. You see, she thrives off of chaos. So, on that same night of the explosion, Abooksigun ordered an emergency meeting demanding a holy jeûne the next day and all unbelievers to escape to the south past the Mason-Dixie line. He was met with contempt by most of them, as one man shouted, "I got up for this shit. Man, fuck you and your God. I'm going back to bed." 200 out of 3,000 non-believers did listen to him. "We don't know where to go." Abooksigun said, "Head to Arizona once you pass the Mason-Dixie line. They have a place for non-believers, but if you stay here, you will die," and they left right away. Bastet made her way in the spirit and possessed the minds of all non-believers, even the Anakitas and Computans, as they slept. She possessed them with their desire, their lust, and thirst for revenge. The ghetto was furious over Abooksigun's presence and thought they were well off before he came. The Anakitas were furious about the deaths caused by the water poisoning, and for the Computans, it was the sewage. The Computans were living in deplorable conditions. The sewage slowly took over the bubble, and their equipment malfunctioned. Many Computans tried to go off-world, but the machine overflowed with sewage. Can you imagine living in a bubble with poisoned water and the smell of shit everywhere? Large roots formed everywhere as Bastet drained the people and had them under her control. Those under her power released a low vibration, but enlightened individuals gave off a much higher vibration, and the roots would attack them if they stepped on or near her vines and roots. Each soul she possessed became a branch within her, and each branch was her strength. The area looked like the Amazon forest. Large roots and vines covered and blocked the entrances of T3, the ghetto, and the entire scope of New York overnight. The guards hadn't noticed the roots until sunrise the following day. Bastet turned her captives into zombie-like creatures that obeyed without hesitation. Anacondas and computans are in front of them, and their Wakatilians, friends, and family are behind them. Yael and all the guardians appeared before them, and the guardian of Guardians appeared as they prepared for war. The guardian of guardians shouted, "Awaken or die." Big Masai paused and rolled up a cigarette. She took a drag as she continued, Abooksigun shouted, "IWA," and alarms went off. AkunSimBel quickly got dressed as she was locking in her armor. She looked up and saw Bastet in the mirror. She was beautiful countenance with a wicked appearance. She looks much like their mother, Asanananu, or Asuna. Big Masai paused and looked at Cush. He replied, "I got it now, Big Masai." Big Masai smiled. "Okay, I just want to make sure," as she continues, and she also looked slightly like Akutukananu. Bastet was suddenly behind AkunSimBel. Startled, she jumped around to face her enemy. But no one was there as she heard a burst of evil laughter. "Daughter of Ojima, you are the weakest one." The creature cackles. Panicked, AkunSimBel calls for her sister, but no sound leaves her mouth. She grabs her throat and realizes she cannot speak nor use her powers. Bastet reappears in front of AkunSimBel. "Daughter of the Nile." AkunSimBel looks up again, mortified, as she realizes that her powers are useless. She pulls out one of her daggers and swipes at Bastet, who quickly dodges them. From the right, AkunSimBel swipes in an arch pattern, the same for the left. Bastet dodges AkunSimBel several times. Meanwhile, Akutukananu feels something is wrong with her sibling and leaves her room to go and check on AkunSimBel. Akutukananu moves quickly through the hallway, feeling a sense of urgency to reach her sister. She hears a whisper, "Daughter of Ojima." Akutukananu hears the voice in her inner ear, causing her to freeze and tense up. "No, no. Bell." She runs down the hallway attached to a corridor that leads down a staircase, screaming, "Bell." She busts through a door that leads to the backyard. The door disintegrates before Akutukananu as she runs straight through it. Dark clouds hover ahead and move away from Jatames. Home. Within the clouds, Akutukananu sees a helpless, possessed, and weakened AkunSimBel and Bastet. "No!" she screams. Akutukananu becomes a blur as she runs at superhuman speed inside a vertically formed wind vortex. She takes flight, turning the vortex into a wild tornado and running on the back of this vortex that leaves the ground and aims directly for Bastet and AkunSimBel. Wicked laughter ensues, and lightning flashes all around Akutukananu as she reaches her hand out for her sister. AkunSimBel is not herself, and time appears to have slowed. The demonic Abenian which controlled AkunSimBel as she shouted, "Lux Takri." A massive burst of energy leaves AkunSimBel's mouth with a piercing sound. A hot white burst of energy cleaves through Akutukananu's left lung, causing her to gag and choke on her blood. Down on the earth, Alda feels the power of Sabaoth running through his veins. Bastet commanded the vines to sprout from the earth, wrap around Alda and bind him to it. "No," Alda says as he is drained of his power by the massive vines and hears the sound of Bastet's deep, dark, and evil laughter. "Not this time, Alda. Your tricks worked once but will not work twice." Abooksigun hurls a spear directly at Bastet, who knocks it out of the air. She stretches forth her hand at Abooksigun, and the ground opens up and moves upward towards the sky, throwing Abooksigun several feet away, which causes a massive quake. But Dung catches him. LaRouche stamps the earth, seismic terror. The gigantic earthen rock drops back down to the earth. Bastet's evil yellow cat eyes notice LaRouche, son of the earth. I will bury you in it. Bastet commands the ground to move again, but it doesn't. LaRouche has total power. He sees the vines binding Alda and commands them to release him. Bastet screams in rage and releases the roots and vines that cover the entrances of T3 and the ghetto. The possessed rushed toward Abooksigun and his warriors while Bastet disappeared with AkunSimBel. Abooksigun and his warriors cut them all down one by one. After the battle, the sky clears, and Alda struggles to stand up. What was that? Alda exclaims. Abooksigun, out of breath and in pain with a slash in his right arm, says. That's an Abenian, a demon. The pain grasped his arms and shoulder. LaRouche runs in the direction of Akutukananu. She's near death and is bleeding out. LaRouche stretches his hands over Akutukananu and prays for her, earth and nature. God in heaven, bring forth your healing power. He shouts in Hebrew, Rofi. Akutukananu's tattered skin sews itself back together by the power of Sabaoth. Akutukananu cried out in pain, and then the pain was gone. She breathed heavily but was relieved that the wound had been healed and praised Sabaoth for her life. The guardian of guardians appears before them all, standing in the heavens. Dressed in gold, crystal-like armor with a crystal crown growing out of his head, the angel speaks with a powerful voice. You all were warned of this day's coming. Now is not the time to let your faith waver. Stand strong. You are being surrounded as I speak. Fight in the spirit, and the flesh will follow. Then go and search out this fallen foe. You will be victorious, and you will conquer all. Sabaoth is with you. The angel fades away from the heavens, and the warriors for the Almighty get a sudden burst of power and renewed strength. Abooksigun ordered all to wipe their weapons at the trough in front of Jotam's home as he poured out the contents of his san into it. They are everywhere. Calls from T3 and the ghetto entrances came over the earpiece as the people overran them. Most of the people who escaped from prison were stationed at the entrance of T3 and fought like madmen, but the people stationed at the ghetto hesitated to kill the possessed people who exited the gate because they were friends or family members. Losing a third of the warriors from the ghetto, Abooksigun became upset. These are no longer your family and friends, they all have been possessed, and if you don't kill them, they will kill you, he shouted, but the people still hesitated. Fall back to the train station, he ordered everyone as the area became saturated with the possessed. Hours had passed, but there was no letting up. T3 slowly became filled with vines and roots. Dung took his samurai and chopped at the roots, and a loud cry could be heard for miles, and the possessed people began to shake in pain. Roots dug themselves out of the ground and started hurling themselves at the warriors. Abooksigun saw a child tangled up in vines and shouted to Dung, "Follow me, D." Abooksigun slashed away at the vines and helped the child escape. Looking behind, making sure no one was left behind, Abooksigun ran toward Dung as he cut away at the vines. Dung looked behind Abooksigun and saw a root headed toward him and jumped in front of it as he tried to morph, but he tripped on a vine. Seeing he couldn't morph in time, he put himself in front of Abooksigun and root heading their way, and the roots punctured his lungs. Time stops, darkness covers Abooksigun. And he sees what looks to be his father. "Pops, is that you?" Wanyenyekevu, curious himself, calls out. Abooksigun? Hearing his son's voice for the first time in over 12 years. Abooksigun asked, "Pops, how did you get here?" Wanyenyekevu ran to him and cried, saying, "Son, I missed you." Looking around, Wanyenyekevu asked, "Where are we?" Abooksigun smiled, "This is New York, and we're at war with." "How did you get?" Wanyenyekevu and Abooksigun talked for hours, so it seemed, about their adventures. Wanyenyekevu spoke about his trip to Ireland, and Abooksigun talked about his adventures in New York and all he had accomplished. Pops. Abooksigun asked, how did you do it? These people are selfish, some believe in Sabaoth, and others don't. I cannot tell which is which. It is confusing at times. Before Wanyenyekevu could answer, Mletsi and Mshika appeared before them. You shall find out at this moment, for you shall receive a twofold spirit of your father. We gave you this opportunity to speak to each other for one last time. For Wanyenyekevu's time has come to an end and shall be taken with us, for one must die to receive the gifts of the other. It is your turn to take the reign. Abooksigun, you shall be taken from here and sent off-world where many lights shall shine, but because of your father's decision, a generation shall have no light, but that light, you, shall be taken to where Sabaoth needs you. There is no need to learn his gifts, for when it is passed on to you, you shall see and feel all that he has since his enlightenment, and you shall know of his gifts like breathing. Not only his gift, but you shall inherit his wisdom, knowledge, and his understanding. Afterward, your grandson shall carry the torch and open up the hearts of many living in darkness. The last true light to shine on this earth. Mletsi and Messiah walked toward Wanyenyekevu, saying, my faithful servant. Welcome home, for you have fought a great fight and worry not about your family, for they shall be comforted by your loss. You are truly sleeping but at peace with us. Wanyenyekevu walked away, and Abooksigun shouted, Pops. Wanyenyekevu turned, and Abooksigun cried, I love you, with tears in his eyes. Wanyenyekevu shouted back, I'm proud of you, son, and I love you too. In a matter of seconds, Abooksigun not only lived in his father's eyes for decades but also mastered his father's gift. Abooksigun catches a glimpse of time and different futuristic outcomes. Darkness returned to Abooksigun as he relived the moment that Dung fell to the ground. Akutukananu, his kinsman, Ithan, and Alda saw what happened and ran toward them. Dung, slowly dying, handed Abooksigun his sand and Old One's knife. Give this sand to Anu, and you keep Old One's knife. I want you guys to finish this. He murmured before taking his last breath. Fury engulfed the Dirty 30 as they took out the roots and vines using their gifts, and some combined their gifts on the possessed people, and the vines and roots retreated off the area. Once the Dirty 30 surrounded Dung, the roots and vines engulfed them. Ithan was strangled and torn apart by his metal legs. Akutukananu's mouth was sealed shut, thrown in the air, and beaten to death by the branches. They all die a troubled death, and Abooksigun was left by himself weeping when a tree fell on him. Darkness covered Abooksigun again as he saw Dung slowly dying, and again he handed him his sand and Old One's knife. Give this sand to Akutukananu, and you keep Old One's knife. I want you guys to finish this. He murmured before taking his last breath. Akutukananu, Ithan, and Alda saw what had happened and ran toward them. As Akutukananu approached, a large branch hurled toward Akutukananu and punctured her in the back, followed by two smaller branches that grabbed her arms and pulled her in half as blood splashed in Abooksigun's face. She uttered a horrible yell, and Abooksigun stood in shock as another branch wrapped around his throat as he passed out into the darkness. Again, the darkness covered him, but this time when Akutukananu made it to him, he had a look on his face. Looking at Akutukananu, he said, Baby, do you trust me? Akutukananu saw his face, and it was the first time he had ever called her baby, and she said, Yes, you know I do. Abooksigun said, Do everything I tell you. Jump 2 inches to your right as he took out his samurai and cut a large branch that hurled his way. Now, on the count of 3, take out your sword and cut that vine to your right, 'cause I have one coming to your left. 1, 2, 3. Now, follow me, 'cause now I can see like my father. Abooksigun got on his earpiece, no radio sounds until I tell you, all clear, and only pay attention to my voice. Sabaoth has come to our rescue. Just when Abooksigun thought he had a perfect scenario, it ended in the death of too many of his people. Abooksigun understood that one small change could produce different results, so he played out different scenarios before he picked one. Akutukananu, his kinsman, Ithan, and Alda saw what happened to Dung and ran toward them. Dung, slowly dying, handed him his san and Old One's knife. Give my san to Akutukananu, and you keep Old One's knife. I want you guys to finish this. He murmured before taking his last breath. Abooksigun shouted to his men, no. Stop. I got this. Head toward the train station, make an ice bridge to Liberty Island, and wait for me. Leave Alda behind to wait for me, and don't look back, for Sabaoth has shown me my path. Abooksigun took out his san and weapons and wiped them all with the content from the san, and Yael appeared, fight in the spirit, and the flesh will follow. Abooksigun knew every move the vines, branches, and roots would make before they made them and cut them into pieces. As they met his weapons and turned into a puff of smoke as Bastet could be heard from miles in pain. Abooksigun made it to the train station, and Alda was waiting for him. Everyone has made it. What took you so long? I was beginning to worry. Abooksigun smiled, practicing the new gift that I was promised. Sabaoth is able. Not understanding what he meant, Alda just smiled. Okay, let's go. Abooksigun told Alda, burn this ice bridge so no one can follow us. Today has been a long and painful day. Abooksigun turned on his earpiece, and everyone was happy to hear from him. Destroy the train tracks ahead of Liberty Island and behind it. That will be our home for the time being. Fish for food and secure the perimeter by air and water. Me and Alda are on our way. Abooksigun arrived on the island, and one of the men used his gift and made a memorial to honor the fallen out of cement. Abooksigun tired, may I have your attention? Today, Sabaoth has shown me so much. My father, my dear and best friend. Abooksigun paused, trying to hold in his grief. Dung is gone. Old One and many more have died, and I appreciate them all. My gift is to see 20 minutes into the future and read a man's heart. I didn't know that if you are enlightened, your heart is pure. I'm tired, and we will discuss our situation tomorrow. 24-hour. Guard duty on this rock until Sabaoth shows us what we need to do. The people felt Abooksigun's pain as he walked to the memorial and read it. In honor of the warriors of T3, Old One, Dung. Rubbing on Dung's name, Akutukananu walked up with a plate in hand. Here, eat. Abooksigun smiled. Baby, I never told you this, but I do love you. He reached in his pocket and handed her Dung's san. He told me to give this to you. Tears fell from her eyes, and Akutukananu said, I love you, too, and thank you. He sat in a corner, ate his meal, and cried to sleep thinking about Dung.